Alright, so we have Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler. So Nick Diaz is 38, just turned 38. Robbie Lawler is nearly 40, so bunch of old guys. 1 inch height advantage and a 2 inch reach advantage for Nick Diaz. So break down the striking of these two. So they're both southpaws. They both generally like to forward pressure their opponents. I'm interested to see who's going to be able to take the front foot here. For Nick Diaz, he's more of a volume puncher. For Robbie Lawler, he's more of a power puncher, and he's usually looking for like big shots. But for Nick Diaz, he's looking to, you know, pepper you. He's looking to put the volume on. 1-2 counter right hook. I think that's what he caught Robbie Lawler in the first fight with, the counter right hook. But yeah, his head doesn't move off center line when he is throwing, and when he throws that left rip to the body, which he loves to do, left rip to the body and then followed up with a right rip to the body and follow it up with a straight left. His head doesn't move off center line, and he's just, you know, very vulnerable in that position. You know, hands are completely low, you know, when he's going to the body, chin in the air, head's just still. And yeah, he's just very open for shots there. Robbie Lawler, he does have a bit of power. Obviously power, they say, is the last thing to go when you get older. Has a nice uppercut, naked straight left, naked right hook. As I said, you know, mostly throwing just singular shots. But when opponents try and, you know, pressure him or, you know, close the distance on him, he just looks to plant his feet and throw a haymaker when the opponent's rushing forward. So volume, you got to say, goes to Nick Diaz. And the bigger shots, I'll probably say, will be landed by Robbie Lawler or thrown by Robbie Lawler. For Nick Diaz, he doesn't check leg kicks. His kicks are quite slow when he does throw them. When he is pressuring, he won't cut off the cage, and he's very flat-footed in general. So, you know, these are a few of the things that he showed a few years ago. Well, like 5-6 years ago. Like, yeah, like these are the things. So who knows what he's doing now, really. In regards to the grappling, Robbie Lawler doesn't really look for takedowns, but he will look to punish you for takedown attempts. So he looks to, you know, stuff the head, really go for elbows, hammer fists, try to reverse position, get on top and do some damage in top position. For Nick Diaz, his wrestling isn't great, doesn't set up his takedowns at all. How these guys win fights, so for Nick Diaz, he's got a great chin. For Robbie Lawler, he's powerful, he's got power still, and I think his chin's decent. Hasn't been, what's he been knocked out like a few times in his career? Like the only one I can think of lately was Tyron Woodley, and that was a while ago, and also Tyron, like when he does connect, he hits like a truck. But besides that, I can't really think of anybody. I can't even think of fights that he's been dropped in recently. But yeah, good cardio for Nick Diaz. How these guys lose fights, so the volume for Lawler is fine generally, but lately he's just not been throwing enough. Poor takedown defense for Nick Diaz. So pass to victory for these two. So I think it's pretty straightforward, you know, pass to victory for these two. So for Nick Diaz, obviously it's the volume and the pressure, you know, overwhelm him the same way that Colby and Neil Magny were able to do. And that's the path to victory, really. And for Robbie Lawler, try to take the front foot because he's much less effective on the back foot. Also look for low calf kicks. Robbie Lawler doesn't generally throw them. Even when he's facing a southpaw, he doesn't generally throw them. But Nick Diaz, he doesn't check them at all. Also look for uppercuts when he's got that high guard. But yeah, look to mix in takedowns as well, get some top control, win some minutes there. How I see the fight playing out? So yeah, just no idea how, really. Like all these takes that I've made in this video are based on Nick Diaz when he last fought. I don't know how he is now. I don't know how he's going to perform. I don't know how he's going to look. It's been 5-6 years since he last competed. And you've got to assume that he's worse or roughly the same as to when he last fought. I don't think he's going to get any better. I don't think he would have, you know, improved at all, really, or evolved much as a fighter. Just from the interviews I've seen and his attitude towards competing and towards fighting in general. Also, the gym that he trains at, like the guys from that gym, they're not improving at all. Like, you know, Nate Diaz, Chris Avila, AJ Agazam, blah blah blah, a few other fighters from there. Like, they're just not improving at all. Also, I don't know how much he's been training. Like, it seems like he's been in shape because he does like triathlons and shit like that or whatever they do. But it hasn't seemed like he's been training MMA during his time off. It seems like he's completely gone cold turkey on the sport, but he seems to want to come back now. They'll probably go to war, I guess. That's how they both like to fight. That's all they know, really. Diaz will probably be on the front foot. He's probably going to be throwing a lot more than Lawler. He's definitely going to walk into a few Lawler bombs, but we've seen Robbie just have a lot of trouble with pressure and guys that throw volume, where he just gets outworked, which is absolutely something Nick Diaz can do. Like, it's definitely the path to victory for Nick Diaz, in my opinion. But MMA, just as a whole, has evolved so much since Nick Diaz last fought. And Robbie's been competing, and he's been facing some real tough competition. And he, hasn't been totally blown out. Like, he's lost basically every round, but he hasn't been blown out of the water, really. He hasn't been like 10-8'd or he's just looked completely shot. It's more of a fact that he looks a little gun shy recently. Like, I don't know where he's at. I don't know which headspace he's at, because, in fights, he seems pretty content with losing these days. Like, he seems pretty content with giving away rounds. Just doesn't do much in fights anymore. Doesn't have great body language in between rounds. Kind of seems like he's got a lot on his mind. But yeah, I'm just flip-flopping on this one, really. It just depends on which Robbie shows up. If it's the one that fought Ben Askren, then he probably dusts Diaz really easily, because Diaz is not very good. Like, he's not a very good fighter. But, if it's the guy that's been showing up lately, Diaz probably just puts it on him and just out-volumes him, outworks him. So if you guys could like the video, that'd be awesome. So the prediction is Nick Diaz. I'm going to go with Diaz over 5 rounds for sure. I'm not for sure, but I think it's very close. I think the line's correct because no one really knows what the fuck's going on with this fight. And it's just a tough fight to call, really. Like, a lot of unknowns. Nick Diaz coming back after like 6 years or something like that. And yeah, but like Robbie Lawler hasn't looked great either. So it's just a weird fight to call. I wouldn't blame anybody if they got this fight wrong. It's a bit of a weird matchup. It's a tough fight to call, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I do think Nick Diaz does win, just on volume at the end of the day, over 5 rounds. I mean, none of these props are really enticing, honestly. I bet Nick Diaz by decision at like $3.80 or something like that, but I didn't really like it at the time. I just wanted some action on the fight, and I definitely don't like plus $1.75 or $2.75. That's not good enough. I don't like any of these props, honestly. It's probably best to stay away from this fight, really.